Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. And it's a Monday night, which is a bit of a treat for me because normally this is the members only slot, but we just done that and we're into the main channel for this evening. We're doing a Premier League preview and really looking forward to it. We did our championship preview last week as the championship kicked off, and the Premier League is going to be a very interesting animal this year, as it was last year. But I think it's as competitive as ever. And I'm delighted to welcome, for the first time on camera, we've seen him in the comments now and again, skulking about in some of the shows, but I'm delighted to welcome Theo, who's from the Shed End podcast, which is the Chelsea podcast, but we'll forgive him that. How are you, my friend? You welcome as well.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me, and apologies as well. I've got to say that before. Apologies for last week for not turning up. Obviously, it's all good, but yeah, no, good to be here. Obviously, I'm a fan of the channel, so pleasure to be here. Hopefully, give some good thoughts and views.
That's it, mate. We all like talking football at the end of the day, which is something which links us all, isn't it, I suppose. And like in regards to last week, mate, honestly, don't worry about it. I got 3 teenage boys, and I know exactly what it's like to have small kids, and they never want to work to your schedule, shall we say? So it is what it is, isn't it? Something's always happening. So a bit later on, we're going to have a good deep dive into what happened at Chelsea last year. But before we get to that, I want to focus on the championship. I'm so used to saying it. The Premier League. So we're going to talk about the Premier League in general terms. Then we're going to focus on the sort of the traditional top 6, but also some of the teams who are kind of rivaling those sides. We'll talk a bit about the relegation. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go through every single team and their transfer business. But just kind of general thoughts. Who do you think could be a bit of a surprise team this year in the Premier League?
It's tough. I mean, Newcastle done really well last season, and I think they're a team that I feel will try and push on from what they achieved. Had a really fantastic season. Getting back into the European football, something that Newcastle have been starved of for years. So I think they will be a team that will probably go on and surprise a lot of people. I think there's people that might think because of how good they've been last season that they might, with European football now as well as a factor that they've got to include into their fixtures, that they might struggle. But I think they'll do okay. I think Eddie Howe's a really good coach. I like him as a manager. I think he's done really well in terms of Bournemouth, Newcastle. So I think he'll do well there. Maybe not a surprise package, but in terms of overachieving, which I feel they did last season, no one really had them. If you think back to when Steve Bruce was there, no one had Newcastle, in Europe. So I think there'll be a surprise package. I think this season, Tonali, I think is a brilliant signing for them. Very out of the window, sort of, out of nowhere. So I think he'll be very key to them, and obviously they've got a good solid spine in terms of the squad that they've got there already. So I think Newcastle, for me, would be one. Maybe Burnley as well. I think Burnley will have a good season. They've done really well in the Championship. Vincent Kompany again, learning his trade, doing it the right way in terms of where he's been. Anderlecht, then Burnley, and he's come back into the Premier League now as a manager. So I think they'll do well. I think they're my 2 surprises. I think Burnley, will do well. Newcastle, even with European football, I think will do just as good as well.
Yeah, and of course Burnley have got that. They got a 20 goal a season striker in Wout Weghorst, so he's going to bang them in week after week. No, I think I agree with you to a certain extent with Burnley, but I think Newcastle's an interesting one because I think when me and Rodri talked about it at the start of last year, and we sort of felt with the money that they've got available is like, in terms of funding, I guess is ludicrous. Like, it's more than Man City, is so much. But we always felt like, the way we discussed it was that last year they'd kind of push, maybe get Europa League, and then it would take 2 or 3 seasons to get to the Champions League and then kind of consolidate from there. But they didn't. They got there ahead, and I think that's largely in part to Eddie Howe. I think he's a really good manager. And if you look at the signings that they brought in this summer, I think they're really clever signings. I think, look, as you mentioned, Tonali is an absolute phenomenal signing. It was a bit of a surprise as they got done quick as well. But Harvey Barnes, they've promoted a couple of academy graduates. Anthony Gordon, I think, even though I'm not his biggest fan, I think he will take some confidence. He finally got his goal towards the end of the last season. And also the fullback from Southampton. I'm not sure if that's gone through now. Yeah, it looks like it has.
Yeah, Livramento.
Yeah, another good player. And I think they all feel like Eddie Howe players. So I don't expect them to take too long to sort of accommodate to the way he wants to play. I think they'll do pretty well, but it's so competitive in that sort of top 6, if you like. There's all the teams, I think there's an argument to say they've done decent business, which we'll kind of get into now. But I agree with Rob, who's just said in the comments he thinks Villa will push on for top 4 this year. I think Villa already had a great manager. And who did I watch? I watched them against, I think it was against Man City towards the end of the season last year. I was really impressed with them. And I felt like they were only 2 or 3 good players away from really, becoming a problem for those sort of the big teams, if you like. What do you think of Villa? Like, do you rate Emery?
Yeah, I do. I think, you got to remember when he came in, I think Aston Villa was 17th in the league when Steven Gerrard was sacked. So, to get, I think they got Europa Conference or Europa League. They've got one of the 2 this season now. So I think for me, brilliant manager. I think they've brought in Moussa Diaby, Pau Torres, I think.
Pau Torres is a good one.
I mean, 2 massive signings. Again, you're talking about, Villa with a lot of history. You have to remember back to, the 90s and early 2000s. They were in, the UEFA Cup. They were in European competition. So it's not unknown for them to be playing European football. And Unai Emery is a really good manager. He loves those kind of Europa. You think back to his time, in Spain, he loved playing in that tournament and won it a few times, I think, as well. So I think Villa a very good shout. I mean, it all depends on Martinez. I think Martinez, the goalkeeper, I think he's sort of being cherry picked away. I think at one point it was Chelsea. I think another club, maybe it was Arsenal, might wanted him back as well. But I think they're going for Raya now, aren't they? So they've got to keep hold of that team. Leon Bailey, I think, is a really good player. Obviously, Ollie Watkins is there. John McGinn does a lot of running in that midfield for them. So they've got a really good squad. And Unai Emery, credit to him as well. He brought back some of the best parts of Tyrone Mings, which Steven Gerrard couldn't do. You think back to when Tyrone Mings was under, I think he was at the team at one point as well, under Gerrard. In comes Unai Emery, brings a new lease of life to Tyrone Mings, which, no disrespect to Villa fans, but it's no easy, thing to do. So I think
no, not at all.
You have to give him credit there as well.
100%. And I think I'm not going to allow myself to get set off by and go off on a Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard rant because I'll be here all day. Once I get going on them two as managers, it becomes a long show. I think a couple of teams who I think may struggle this year. I think Wolves are they look like they really could struggle this year. Everton, I think, if they don't make the right signings, they've flirted with relegation and just got out at the last minute the last 2 seasons. And I said it last week, you can only do that so many times before you get caught. And I thought they were very lucky last year. It was more a case of results went their way elsewhere than them digging themselves out of it. So I looked at Forest and I looked at Bournemouth. They dug themselves out of the relegation battle with football and good form, picking up results on the road. Everton kind of scraped by, and it was the results elsewhere which kind of helped them out. And I think they might struggle. Another team which might surprise people who I worry about a little bit is Brighton, because they've lost, or obviously Caicedo is technically still there at the moment. If Caicedo goes, I worry for them, I should say, because I think to lose your central midfield is massive. And I know, they'll bring players in to a certain extent. But I think sometimes people, because it's Brighton and it's not necessarily like what is a traditional big club in the UK, is you underestimate the players. Like Caicedo, for me, out of all the midfielders which we've seen, go in, Declan Rice's, Mason Mounts, all these different players who've gone to the sort of top half clubs, to me, Caicedo is the one that's like a no-brainer. McAllister obviously went to Liverpool as well. Like Casado to me is the one that if I was a fan of one of those clubs, he's who I want. And I know obviously he's been linked with Chelsea because he's so good at what he does, but he can also play, he can play like a holding mid, he can play at number 8, he can play right back. He's young. There's very little downside to him. But for some reason, it only seems like Chelsea are after it. Like, and it doesn't really, I think it's probably the price, but I'd rather pay 90 for him than 105 for Declan Rice. So
yeah,
I worry for them, but they've got a very, very good manager. So I'm sure, Kudus has been linked with them the last couple of days. He'd be a great signing.
Yeah, agree. I think with Everton, going back to them really quickly, I agree with you 100%. I think they'll struggle. They've been struggling. I think if you go back, you just mentioned Brighton. I think that was the only game potentially that saved them. If you think about that freak result that Everton got back into last season, and results went their way. You think back to Leicester. I think Leicester went on a really bad run as well after that. But yeah, Everton really, really are in trouble, and they spent a lot of. They should not be hovering above relegation every season. They spent over 600 million in the past couple of seasons. When you go back to some of the signings, the big names that they brought in under whatever manager it was at the time, but they've spent too much money to be that end of the table. They should be at least mid-table, building on that mid-table momentum, going in for Europa League, and then whatever else after that. But to be where they are, they've got a new stadium coming next season as well, so they don't want to be playing championship football in a new stadium, have to spend all that money to get it done. And this is no criticism to Everton as well, but they will struggle, I think, to get out of the championship. We saw some of the games over the weekend. I know Leicester went on to win against Coventry, but Coventry gave them a decent game. So it's not just a case of a team goes down. You look at Leeds and Ipswich as well. So it's not a case of you just go down and you're going to bounce back and do a Burnley. It's not just that easy. So Everton will struggle. I agree again with Brighton. I think Brighton. The thing with Brighton, I think they have a really good chain of talent coming through. And I think
the other thing, I was going to say with Brighton, I just remembered is Levi Colwell at the moment doesn't look like he's going back on loan.
Well, he signed a new deal.
Player.
Yeah, signed a new 5-year deal now at Chelsea, so he's staying for the season. But I think they've got a lot of talent at Brighton. They've got too much talent to. They'll miss McAllister, they'll miss Caicedo 100%. But they need to now bring through that new. They always seem to find a gem from somewhere, don't they?
Yeah, you're right.
So. Whoever that is, they're going to have to bring them into that midfield, or like you say, bring in some extra resource from outside. But it's a massive loss for them. You look at the two. Your midfield's pivotal. You have to get your midfield right. They've lost 2, and I think this is why they can't afford really to let the 2 of them go in one season. If they've let McAllister go for 35 million, which I think is crazy in terms of outrageous. The money and the fee. Caicedo apparently is not training. He's refusing to train at the moment. He didn't train today. He's refusing to train at the moment. So he's forcing that move through to wherever. Obviously Arsenal wanted him, I think, in January. If you think back to the winter window, he was promised he could leave in the summer as long as, he stayed at Brighton for the remainder of the season. And whatever's happened, whether that was just a, verbal agreement or whoever agreed that, it clearly hasn't been adhered to, and Caicedo I think feels that he's been let down by the club. So it's probably not the best way to go about it in terms of trying to get a move. But if he doesn't get a move, like you said, I don't think there's going to be many clubs coming in for him in the next couple of weeks.
Let me ask you about that. So take your Chelsea hat off a bit. Where do you stand on players having kind of like a verbal agreement? So obviously you've had Harry Kane did it previously where he was promised to move to Man City if he stayed, and then it didn't come, and he didn't train for a bit, tried to force it through. It didn't materialize. Then it seemed like this year again, he had a verbal agreement that they'd let him go in the summer to, whether it was United or whoever, and they seemed to be refusing to sell. Then same with Caicedo. He stayed, he signed a new contract to get his own pay rise and to get the club, a better price. But also I think Trossard left as well. So the club probably didn't want to lose both of them in January. Like, where do you stand with that? Because, he's an asset for the club. But ultimately, if he hadn't signed that new contract in January, he would have the leverage now because he'd only have a year or 2 left. and he wouldn't be worth as much. So it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? And I think, to me, if players do give you that extra year or 6 months, whatever, and they stick with you when you ask them to, on the promise that you'll let them go for the X amount the next window, I think you should stick to it. But a verbal agreement means nothing at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I was going to say, I think if you're a decent person, you honor the agreement. If you think back to, I think it was Eden Hazard, the only example I'm trying to use without my Chelsea hat being on, but he was told he could leave to go to Real Madrid at the end of the season. He carried on playing for Chelsea. I think his last game was Baku, maybe Arsenal, Europa League final. And he left. He left on good terms. It was agreed well before that final that he was going to Real Madrid. So I think there's a way of doing it. But I think if there's a U-turn from the club, you're under contract. And I think if you're someone like Caicedo, who's probably been ill-advised by his agent to sign a deal with clauses in that doesn't really suit what he wants in terms of trying to get a move away from the club, then he's stuck. He's banged to rights because you've signed a deal. I'm not sure how long it is. I don't know if there's a release clause in there. I don't think there is, because I'm sure Chelsea would have activated it by now. So it's a weird one. Surely you would have said, right, I want to leave in the summer. This is my valuation. I think I want in my contract. I think I'm worth 70 or 80 million. Put that in the contract as a release clause. Chelsea come knocking in the summer, or whoever, you can go. But it doesn't. I mean, I don't know, why would you sign a deal if you want to leave the club in less than 6 months, 7 months of signing that deal? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think when you've got to be a professional. We call them professional athletes. They're professional athletes at the end of the day. They're professional footballers at the end of the day. They've got to act professional. You couldn't turn up at your job elsewhere and just say, I'm not turning up because I'm a postman or whatever. I don't want to deliver down that road. I want to go and deliver down that road. But it doesn't work like that. That's your job. So just do what you get paid to do. And if the deal comes in and the two clubs can meet that valuation and agree it and personal terms are agreed, then so be it. But if not, you've signed a deal, you've signed a contract. So you're locked in.
Yeah. Ultimately, if he was, I suppose it sounds like he didn't expect them to kind of go back on their word. But what he should have done is sign the contract, but had a release clause put in. Yeah. And then that takes out the sort of verbal side of it. It's interesting because Trossard has left, Levi Colwell, McAllister, potentially Caicedo. There's some big shoes to fill. They have got Evan Ferguson up there, up top, who I think is tremendous young talent. And I think actually he'll be the next one, whether it's next year or the year after, who will probably go for big money. And Mitoma as well is they've got quality players and they've got a great manager. But I think McAllister and Caicedo are not only quality footballers, but they're so important to the way they play with the inverted fullbacks and stuff like that. And I just don't. I'm not sure. I'm not saying they'll get relegated. Just I'm not sure they're going to be right up there like they were last year. I don't know, but we'll see. In the Premier League, who do you think has had the best transfer window so far, as of today?
It's a good question. It's going to pain me to say this. You can't look away from City. They brought in Gvardiol, Kovacic, who I still think is a brilliant player. But they've lost some players as well. But I think Liverpool needed to rebuild that midfield. And we just spoke about.
They've done enough?
Not yet. I think they need to get that Lavia deal, Romeo Lavia deal done. I think they've put in a 45 million. I think Southampton have basically said 50 million or nothing. Just pay the extra 5 mil. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. I think they need him in that midfield. I think they need someone of that caliber in the midfield. But when you look at, they had Jordan Henderson in that midfield. They had James Milner played in there at times as well. Obviously, Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones, who is still playing in that team as well. So I think they still need someone who's going to be able to play that sort of DM, that sort of the Lavia role. I think that's his role in that team. And I think if they can get that over the line, I think they've had a brilliant summer window, because they didn't need to do much. Trent's obviously got this new sort of new role. He's not just a technically a right back anymore. As they keep saying he can't defend, so he's got a new role, which has worked for him the back end of last season. Their attacking was brilliant anyway. You know, they didn't need to tweak the attackers. They had Salah, Gakpo, Nunez, Diaz, Jota. So that it was just a midfield I felt that they needed to rebuild. And I think they've done that with the players they brought in. But I think they're missing one piece of that puzzle. And I think it's a massive piece. I think if they don't have it, you can't play Curtis Jones in that DM role, which I think they're trying to do. All. You just can't, because they'll get ripped apart in midfield. And obviously Trent stepping in. Robbo's doing the same on the left as well, from what I've been watching in preseason. So I think you need someone solid in there. Just to end on Lavia, I think Man City have a clause in his contract that they can activate a buyback next year. So if no deal's done in the summer, I can't imagine him leaving in the winter window, maybe because he's in the Championship. Maybe he plays half as in the Championship. But if he stays in the summer, next summer, I could see City going in for him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought the clause was that they had to be informed if any bids came in for him, and then they had the opportunity to match it. So if Liverpool bids whatever 50, he can match it, which means obviously that he could end up going to City anyway. But I agree with you. I think Liverpool have had a pretty good window. I think, like you say, it was the midfield that was the problem. They've made a couple of good signings, but they're just lacking that one final piece. And like, if they went into the season now, I think they might get unstuck because they just haven't got up.
That midfield get opened up easily. Yeah.
I think Newcastle have had an a good window. I don't think they've had a blockbuster window where I'm going, wow, they're really going to kick on, or they're going to compete in the Champions League or anything like that. But I think they've had a very good window. I think Tonali, as we mentioned, is just a phenomenal signing. City, I agree, they didn't need to do much, let's face it, but what they've done is pretty good. I don't think Kovacic is going to be as effective as Gundogan is. It's just he's not.
No,
and that would be Gundogan was so imperative to the way City attacked last year. He set the tone, and he was just imperative to how because they changed the way they played a bit going forward from like at the very start of the season, they played a very traditional sort of Pep way of playing, if you like, trying to pass. But obviously that wasn't necessarily the best way to get the best out of Haaland. He needs crosses. He needs maybe into his feet a bit more directly. And they adjusted. And Gundogan was a very big part of that. And I wonder if Kovacic will be able to fulfill the same role, if that makes sense. But I'm not to say that he won't be excellent. I just wonder whether that will mean another change of style, maybe, or a few adjustments for City, I guess.
I mean, they've still got loads of other players that can provide those balls for them. You look at Foden, Grealish. I was going to say Mars, but he's left now, isn't he? But
let me just ask you a quick question. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to ask you a quick question about Phil Foden. How long do you think he can sit on the bench before he gets a bit itchy? Because if I'm him, I'm 24, 23, 24.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time on the bench.
Yeah, it's tough because you paid 100 million for Jack Grealish, so your assumption is that Jack Grealish is always going to start potentially ahead of him, and he's never really had a real run in the team. When you think about Phil Foden, he's never really had that run of games where he looks like he's going to cement himself into the team and become a regular. And I don't think Pep plays like that anyway, apart from your Haalands or. He does like to rotate every now and again. So I don't think in those wide areas, you're going to be able to nail that down and say, right, that's my spot. He's never really done that. So he always like to swap things around. But I think I don't see Foden going anywhere else unless a big bid comes in for him. I don't see where he goes. I don't know what club would come in for him, maybe abroad. But I just think he's content with possibly playing more central as well, if it means he's got to change the way that he plays in order to fit in Grealish and Foden. Maybe he plays more central behind the striker. I'm not sure, but I think I mean, he's still young, 23. I mean, he's still young in football world.
Yeah.
It's just a shame because I think he's a talent. You know,
He was very
he's
good.
he's what I would call a street footballer who, you know, the Joe Cole, you know, who's someone who keeps the ball, knows where the pass is before he's got the ball. He's just gifted. So I think for him, I think he's much better than Jack Grealish in terms of what he can offer for City. Oh, I think City fans are going to hate me for this, but I think 100 million for Jack Grealish was crazy in my opinion. I think you've got Phil Foden that can do the job there.
Well, people keep telling me what a great season Jack Grealish had, and now obviously I'm not including trophies, but if you look at his sort of stats and ground covered and all this, like goals scored, assists, he's quite similar to what Anthony had at United, and he's getting slated. He's getting slated as a flop and this, that, and the other, and it's like, I don't know. I had a bit of a rant last week about the difference in treatment of the foreign players compared to the English players. Is outrageous.
100%.
Look at Harry Maguire and people like this get very protected from.
They're just wrapped in cotton wool.
Yeah, absolutely. Very quickly, because I just reminded myself of a question I was going to ask you. Do you think Harry Maguire would be a very good addition to Everton in terms of staying away from the relegation battle?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, because I think they need defense. They need defenders. I think they lost Connor Cody, which was strange to me because I think they should have kept him. Ben Godfrey came back. I think he broke his leg first game of the season last year, so he still hasn't really put himself back in that team. They need defenders, and I think Harry Maguire is a good defender, but he needs someone really experienced next to him.
I just think he needs to be selective over the team he goes to next in terms of what tactics they play. Like there was rumours of Chelsea being interested in him for whatever. I don't get it, but like Poch plays similar to Ten Hag and Pep and some of these other managers. They play a high line, they press. They're not looking to defend their own box, and they want to play. They want to play out from the back. Everything which Harry Maguire is good at, wants to sit deep, defend his own box, not be left one-on-one versus a forward player. So to me, Everton, I think, probably makes sense. West Ham, I think, makes the most sense because David Moyes would get the best out of him.
Well, I was just going to say, I think West Ham have put a bid in for McTominay and for Maguire, 77 million for the both of them.
Here's a question then, right? If West Ham get Maguire and McTominay for whatever 77 million, is their squad better or the same than when they had Declan Rice?
If you ask me, is it money well spent? I'd say no.
That's interesting too. I'm
a big fan of McTominay. I really do think he's a really good player. He works non-stop when he's on that pitch, and I think he gets a lot of undeserved criticism sometimes, or from United fans, he's had undeserved criticism at times. I think he's a really good player in that midfield, and I like those old traditional midfielders who get stuck in, can carry the ball as well.
Yeah,
I think he's
underrated.
I think you need someone like that, and Harry Maguire going to West Ham, I think possibly would work, but then I'm thinking who's in their defense? Is it still Zuma, Kufal?
Zuma and Maguire as your centre back.
And then and then you've got I can't remember who his left back is now. He's gone out of my mind.
They've got some good players in there, haven't they? Yeah, Cresswell they got as well. Let's have a look at this West Ham squad. They have got some good players within the squad. They've got Ogbonna as a centre back, Korfal, Kurt Zuma.
Yeah, it worries me. I mean,
there's not much pace there,
No, if I was a West Ham fan and I realised that Harry Maguire was coming to my team and I've just lost Declan Rice, I'd strap myself in for a very bumpy season because the idea of Kurt Zuma, who has never really looked solid and comfortable. Yeah, he's always got one mistake in him, Kurt Zuma, or he's just very, I don't know. He just doesn't strike me as someone who's going to be able to command that back line with Harry Maguire next to him as well. I worry about them. I do worry about them. When we spoke about teams who we worry about, I do worry about West Ham because I think they've lost their striker today to Atalanta.
Scamacca.
Yeah, he's gone
He's
to
pretty
Atalanta as
really
well.
good.
Yeah. So
That's good.
you know,
Good
they've lost. I
business
think.
from Atlanta. That is.
Yeah, well, I think he scored 8 in 27 or something. So it's not that bad in terms of his goal ratio. I mean, it could be better, but in terms of what he's done there. I think he's done really well. But to lose him, Antonio's 30, possibly 33. I think he's linked with Everton now as well. So I worry about West Ham because they're a team that I think relied on Declan Rice a lot to do a lot of that dirty work in midfield. They haven't got that now.
Yeah, and I think, look, I know a few United fans who think Scott McTominay will do a better job for West Ham in the Declan Rice role than Declan Rice did. And I was a bit taken aback at first because I thought, I don't think Scott McTominay's better than Declan Rice. But they kind of explained it in that, not necessarily that he's a better footballer. He's very underrated. But they just said he's got half a yard. He's half a yard quicker. He reads the game very well. He can carry the ball probably a little bit better than Declan Rice.
Yeah.
And they said they just think that he will, playing at United as a holding midfielder when Casemiro's not there, is very different to doing that at West Ham. And this is why I questioned, like, everyone assumed that West Ham, Arsenal signing Declan Rice, 100 million, he's going to do bits. But I said, yeah, he might, but he also might not, because playing a holding midfield role on the halfway line and pushing into the opponent's half is not what Declan Rice has done for the last however many years. He's almost been like a fifth or third centre-back. He sits so deep, and it's just different because he's going to have to dictate play. He's going to be breaking the play up further up the pitch, which kind of takes me on to Arsenal. What do you think of their business? Because I really rate Timber, and I think they needed to strengthen. They just didn't have much depth. I still think they're a striker short, though.
Oh, yeah. I was just about to. I mean, I watched the Community Shield yesterday, and, you know, Declan Rice was well up that field. He was almost playing number 9 at one point. In terms of Arsenal, I think they're a striker short. I agree with you. I think, you know, Gabriel Jesus being injured, I think he's missing the best part of, you know, 6 to probably even longer, 6 to 12 weeks out. That's a massive blow for Arsenal. And I can say this with a lot of chest at the moment. Kai Havertz cannot play number 9 for Arsenal.
Well, they signed him as a number 8, and I was like,
yeah. But they've got. Did he
ever play in midfield for you guys?
No,
I was convinced he was more of like a number 10 or like a wide attacker.
You put him on the wide. You put him on the left. He played left for us on left wing, or, you know, the left side of the attack. But he's never played an 8 in terms of what I've seen him at Chelsea anyway.
He's never showed the qualities or the attributes to play in that role to me either. Like,
he's not strong enough.
Were you surprised how much money you got for it?
Yeah, really was, because I think he didn't have the best of seasons at Chelsea. He hasn't had the best of time at Chelsea. I mean, if you talk, you know, everyone talks about the Champions League goal, which I'm sure he'll always be remembered for at Chelsea. But take that away, the money we paid for him. I mean, someone offered you 65 million, you'd snatch their hand off, because I think we paid 72 for him. So based on what we've got out of him and how we're selling him on for, I mean, it's a good bit of business. But I think I mean, it makes sense. You notice a lot of these sort of, you know, London players or players that play for London clubs, they try to keep themselves amongst London somehow. You know, look at Jorginho, you look at now Kai Havertz and other players that have done it, David Luiz, Willian. I think he's gone for that move because it's ideal for him. I don't think he actually wanted to go to Arsenal. I think he was unhappy at Chelsea. Arsenal came knocking. I'm not sure who signed off the deal. I don't know who signed off the deal at Arsenal, but they need to have a quiet word with themselves, because 65 million is daylight robbery for Kai Havertz. He's a really good player on his day. And again, another player that has been heavily criticised for right or for wrong, but someone that needs to prove himself now. I think this is a season where you want to see Kai Havertz prove himself. And if it means you've got to play as a striker, then that's what you've got to do until Gabriel Jesus is back, because, you know, Arsenal fans will be expecting themselves to be back where they were last season.
Yeah.
whether
They're
they
not.
overachieved or
No
not.
one's to shy away from expectations, are they?
Exactly. And no one's going to say that they should have been, pushing City for the league. No one thought that at all.
Of
But
course.
now that you've done it, you can't go back and say, "Oh, we're just going to get Europa. We're just going to get top four," because you've proven without Kai Havertz, without Timber, that you can actually do what you've done last season. So I think I don't think personally they'll be up there, but I think the fans from Arsenal will think that they can do it. And
Yes.
I've just read before, or just flashed up about Kieran Tierney potentially going on loan to
You know what? Who's he going on loan to?
Real Sociedad, apparently.
Big move for him. I
They're,
think.
they're
I think he's a
inquiring. It's
quality
not a done
fullback.
deal. It's not a done deal, but it's they're inquiring at the moment about it. So
But Arteta just doesn't seem to fancy him, which that happens. Sometimes the manager just doesn't take to a player or doesn't rate him. I think Tierney's a quality fullback, and I think there's top clubs in the Premier League who, if they didn't have fullbacks, would look at him. But I think that for whatever reason they're pretty fucked. I'm interested. Go on.
I was going to say just one more thing about Arsenal. I think they will lose, or they'll miss Granit Xhaka, who I think was a massive part of that midfield. And I'm sure Arteta said that's why he brought Kai Havertz in to play the Granit Xhaka role. It won't work, but this is Arteta's words. But I think losing him, not sure how much it was for. It was for 21.6 million. I think they lost him for. Well, we'll see how it pans out for Arsenal, but I think he's going to be a massive loss for them.
Yeah, Rob in a comment says he thinks Memphis Depay would be a good fit for Arsenal. Yeah, I could see that. I think my problem with Arsenal is I really rate Timber. I think Declan Rice could end up being good for Arsenal, but I don't think it's a guarantee. I don't really rate Kai Havertz. I think he's got a lot to prove, and if the plan is truly to play him as a 3 in the midfield and not as a like a 10 or a wide player, I worry for that midfield. I really do. And I look at the business that Man City have done and what they were already like. I look at the business that United have done. I look at the business that Liverpool have done, Newcastle have done, and then I look at Chelsea, who've got no Champions League, no Europa League. Some of the signings that you guys have made. And I look at that and I think, geez, Arsenal aren't even guaranteed to get top 4, let alone challenge for the title again. You don't know how it's going to sort of pan out. Mason Mount. Talk to me about Mason Mount and then we'll take it into, move into the United's business for the window.
Yeah. Strange one. Strange season for Mason Mount. I think, you speak to Chelsea fans, they would have guaranteed that Mason Mount was going to be, Chelsea captain in a couple of years. He was going to be through and through Chelsea. He wasn't going to leave the club. It's a club that he grew up with and whatever else. But I think there were signs early on in the season, even when Thomas Tuchel was there, things weren't right with Mason Mount. He was in and out of the team. I think he got injured at one point. He was out of the team when he come back, changing managers, changing owner. Everything just happened probably at the wrong time. And yeah, you could sense, I think, from I'd say from December, January, maybe after the World Cup, something just wasn't right with Mason Mount. There was just something that wasn't sitting right with the fact that he didn't look like he wanted to be at the club anymore.
Yeah.
And I think United was always going to be his destination. I think that was always going to be the place he was going to go.
Supposedly he turned down Liverpool and a couple of other clubs, I think, didn't he? And it was a weird one because it looked like as soon as it became clear he was going to leave, he seemed, at least from the outside, as if he only was interested in going to United, which almost then makes me wonder, as someone who hasn't really got a horse in the race, if you like, makes me wonder if that was his head turned. Did he know, or was he already thinking about a United move? Once he's made up his mind to go at some point, how far back does that go?
I think it was one of the two. I know there was a lot of conversations that was held with Liverpool, and that's sort of common knowledge that You know, I
Yeah.
think even after one of the games, I think when we played at Anfield, his representatives spoke to their representative Liverpool. There was conversation and dialogue. Whether it came down to the fact Liverpool weren't willing to pay the fee that was paid for him by United, I don't know. But I mean, it's a big club, United. You have to remember, you know, he's not going from Chelsea to a team that's, you know, hasn't achieved or anything. So he's going to a team that's won things over the years. It's a big club, one of the biggest in the world. So the thing with Mason Mount now, I think it's a massive. You know, Chelsea fans gave him a lot of leeway. They gave him a lot of, but it's Mason Mount. You know, he'll be back to his better form. You know, back to back player of the season. He's Mason Mount. So a lot of that was always spoken about amongst the Chelsea fan base. But now you're at United, you don't have that safety net underneath you. You know, if you don't perform, and I've watched a couple of the preseasons games United, and a couple of clips have been sent to me. You know, he hasn't really been pulling up trees.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've watched 2 of their preseason games, and look, on the weekend on Saturday he missed a sitter, but actually his general link-up play and some of the other things he did were very good. But obviously, with the way social media is, things get amplified, don't they? So you see the bad thing he did, but you don't see the 4 or 5 good things he did.
Yeah, of course.
To me, I look at United's midfield, and what they struggled with towards the end of the season was Eriksen looked exhausted.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the legs to do the off-the-ball work when you play the better teams. When you play the sort of the teams down the bottom of the table, Eriksen, you know, he can dictate play and he's fine. But I think, you know, if you take out last season for Mason Mount and you look at his stats and stuff for Chelsea, he creates and he did quite well for Chelsea. That there's a reason why he was viewed as a future captain. He just needs to rediscover that form, and I think he will give you what Christian Eriksen doesn't give you in terms of the pressing and the work rate and the energy and a bit more pace. The problem for him might be is if it looks like Amrabat is coming into United. Now, I really, really rate Amrabat as a stand-in for Casemiro, but also to play with him. So Mason Mount might have gone there and he could be on the bench or he could be shunted out wide a lot. So
yeah. And he can play there. I mean, he can play on the wide areas of the pitch. He can do that. And to be fair, he's probably just as effective there as well.
okay.
I think he'll do well. I mean, I don't want to say just because I watched preseason that he's poor.
Yeah,
I don't think that. I know I've always said there's a really good player in Mason Mount. I just think one, he's a good manager. You think he's had Tuchel, he's had Graham Potter, he had Frank Lampard. You know, he's had a lot of managers to contend with, trying to play their system, play what they want, their philosophy, their tactics. So he just needs, I think, someone to settle him down.
Bit of stability, maybe.
Bit of stability. And I think there's a brilliant player. You don't get back-to-back player of the seasons because your name's Mason Mount. You have to put the shift in, and he done that at Chelsea. He'll rediscover that form. In terms of United overall, I think they are strikers short. I think they've just signed a striker, haven't they?
They've signed
Højlund. I'll be honest, I don't know much about him, so I'm not going to sit here and say I do.
The thing I find funny about it is obviously you get the comparisons, don't you, to Haaland because he's young and he's Scandinavian. But he's a very different player. He's very pacey. He likes to run with the ball. He gets in behind, but he is big. You know, he's a big and strong player. He likes to link up and drop deep. But he's young. So it's like he could come into the Premier League next year because Bruno Fernandes creates so many chances that he could come in and score, 20, 25 goals. But then he could also do what Wout Weghorst did and miss all those chances.
Yeah.
And because he's young, the pressure, he will feel that pressure. You've got to give him time. I guess the one thing United have got in their favour in that respect is I expect Ten Hag to at least start the season with Rashford through the middle or Martial if he's fit.
Yeah,
because Garnacho is so good and he looks really sharp and everything. They can kind of slot him in on the left without too much. It's not like, oh my God, what are we going to do without Rashford on the left? And then you've got Sancho's look good the end of last season and the preseason. He looks fit and sharp.
Yeah.
And I think, do you know, out of all the United players, I think Jadon Sancho is the one who suffered by not having a striker.
Oh yeah, of course.
If you go back to his time at
Dortmund, yeah,
so good with Haaland, and when he has a striker to play off. But if you've got no one there, or like a false nine, or whatever, the different
it doesn't work.
It just doesn't. And I think they've been pretty clever with their business, United, especially if they get Amrabat. I think so it looks like, or at least the last time I looked, they've given Johnny Evans a year.
Yeah.
Which makes sense to me, because I think even Johnny Evans will probably be fifth choice behind.
Well, he's experienced as well.
Yeah.
You put him in the cup games, Carabao Cup, FA Cups, and, certain game, Luton. Again, not to discredit Luton, but, there's certain games that he can come into and you can give, the Varans or whoever a rest and give them a rest. They've got some big games coming up this season as well. Yeah. So, makes sense.
I think their midfield looks very balanced in terms of they've got Casemiro and Amrabat, if he comes in, who are like the sort of more defensive options, although Amrabat can do other stuff. You've got Mount and Fernandes, who can kind of do the running around, if you like, but they're also very creative. And then you've got the young lad, Kobe Mainu, who looks like a real player, but there's no pressure on him because he's got all those first choice players with him.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sancho, you've got Anthony, you've got Rashford, Garnacho, and then you've got Martial and Højlund. And I do think they probably need one more striker, but because you can't rely on Martial. The fact is, on his day, phenomenal player, but
his sick note all the time is a sick note. So I wouldn't put my eggs in one basket for him at all. I think they do need another striker. I think Rashford had a brilliant season. You think back to the season before last when he was sort of dip up and down.
Like he was going to go, didn't he?
It looked like he was going to go, and then he sort of rediscovered his form, which I think Mason Mount can do the same. But I think Rashford has to have that sort of same season of just hitting the ground running and just putting the ball in the back of the net. I think one thing that will help United this season is De Gea not being there, Onana coming in, someone that's more comfortable.
Some assists.
Yeah, well, he's brilliant distribution, good with his feet. He's a good shot stopper as well. Brilliant goalkeeper. I've watched him a lot for Inter Milan, so he's a really, really good goalkeeper. I'm not going to say he's an upgrade from De Gea, but I think he brings a lot more qualities than what De Gea was declined to. I mean, I'm not going to say that he was a poor goalkeeper, but he definitely declined slightly, didn't he? So, I think they needed to bring a younger goalkeeper who could probably fit Ten Hag's style a bit more.
Do you think that Ten Hag is the right kind of manager to get the best out of, like your Mason Mounts, your young striker like Højlund? Like you look at the job he's done with Wan-Bissaka and Rashford, the patience he showed with Sancho, but he also showed a ruthless side with the Ronaldo thing. And there was some other stuff I can't remember off the top of my head, but he kind of showed two sides to his character, but also tactically, I think he seems pretty switched on. I mean, I'm kind of interested because I speak to a lot of United fans, so sometimes I wonder if my view gets sort of skewed a bit there. Yeah. But so I'm interested in what you think as a Chelsea fan. I look at it, the business, and I think Liverpool and United are kind of neck and neck for the best business in the window. Probably just then Arsenal and Newcastle not far behind. But there was a point last season when United played, I think it was Arsenal in the league, and Casemiro got banned the game before.
Yeah.
And then United and Arsenal had a really close game, which Arsenal just pipped. And then United kind of had a bit of a ropey spell then. But I said at the time that I felt that if United could beat Arsenal in that game, they might actually be the ones who were closest to City. Not necessarily going to win the title or go on and, really push them, because Arsenal didn't really push them ultimately.
No, not really.
But I think United weren't that far off Arsenal, and I think they've made good additions all around the squad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think Ten Hag's a really good manager. You think back to what he done in Ajax as well. I think he's. I hate comparisons, but I don't want to compare him to Alex Ferguson at all. but I feel like he brings that sort of balance in terms of, when to not, stay in line and do what you got to do. This is your job. But he also has that sort of arm around the shoulder sort of side to him as well, where he can probably nurture some of the youngsters. Someone even like a Mason Mount. I know Aaron Wan-Bissaka's had a sort of rough time in Manchester as well, and I think he's due to get a new contract. Obviously proved himself
as well.
He's proved himself
now.
Yeah, so when you think back to when Ten Hag come in, he was sort of in and out. I don't think he was even in the team. So he's obviously got that side to him where he's got the man management side right as well, that balance. So I think he's a really good. I think he's the right man for the job. I think he can definitely get some of these players in. And like you said, he doesn't take any sort of rubbish from any of the players. If you don't want to be at the club, then the door's to your left. Leave. Don't pass go. But I think he's definitely got. For me, looks like he's got the qualities there. To try and take United to the next level. I think, as I said, he just needs. This is my theory. I think Harry Kane doesn't go anywhere, and I think he goes to United for free. They give him a nice big signing on fee, which what they probably would have paid in the transfer fee anyway. They would have gave him whatever they give him, 25, 30 million sign on fee. That's what would have gone towards his transfer fee this summer. I think he goes to United. I don't think he wants to go abroad. I think he wants the Premier League record. He's going to get that at United. He's going to get the service at United. I think that happens. I think it will happen. I think he'll stay at Tottenham this year, and I think he'll go to United next year, and he'll break the record.
I agree with everything you said, except I've got a theory that he won't go to Bayern now. I think Bayern are going to go elsewhere because they need a striker. Their season starts in a few days. I think United will sell Maguire, Fred, McTominay, and what's the keeper? Henderson.
Yeah.
And they will go in at the end of the window because they had no pressure on them now. They've got their striker.
They've got a striker.
So they can kind of wait. And then they'll go in and they'll say to Daniel Levy, here's 90 million, take it or leave it. And Levy will go, right, it's 90 million.
Yeah.
And he's sold players at the end of the window before and left them in trouble.
Sure.
So I just think that's what we're gonna. I just got a feeling. And do you think if United was to get Harry Kane now, they're title contenders?
You'd have to have them there. You'd have to have them up there, 100%, because Harry Kane gives you goals. He gives you 20 goals a season. It doesn't even matter whether it's a penalty, a header, or an amazing strike outside the box. He's going to get you 20 goals a season, and you need someone prolific. And I've been saying this at my own channel as well. You need a prolific goal scorer. If you're going to win the league, you can't have players chipping in. Jorginho, I think a couple of seasons ago, was our top goal scorer with penalties. You need someone who's going to put the ball in the back of the net every Saturday, every Sunday, and they're going to be able to do that throughout the season. Harry Kane guarantees you that. The only worry with Harry Kane, there's obviously his age, is going against him now. He's obviously the wrong side of 30 almost. And he does sometimes pick up injuries, which would worry me if I was going to spend that much money on someone who you might get to maybe 3 seasons out of him. How old is he now? 33, 34, something like that. So,
wow.
How many seasons are you going to get out of Harry Kane for 90 million when you could probably go and get Osimhen? You could go and get another striker that you guaranteed to get for the next 5 or however many years. I just think it's a big gamble getting Harry Kane, but he's a proven goal scorer. So I think your theory, my theory, whichever one, if it happens, United are definitely going to be winning silverware.
So, bit of breaking news: Manchester United have rejected the £30 million bid for Scott McTominay. So basically, by the sounds of it, just reading up, West Ham bid 30 million for each player. It's 60 million combined. But I know United want at least 35 to 40 for McTominay. And I think that's a fair price.
Oh, yeah.
Scotland international. I think he's easy worth 40 million. He's got age on his side. He's got a contract. Like 40 million, I think, is fair to both sides of that argument. I think Harry Maguire is another story. 25. I wouldn't be surprised if I would take 30 million for Harry Maguire.
Yeah.
I would take it.
Yeah, you've got to really.
We got to remember for Harry Maguire, by the way, like I've heard or I've read some stuff like he doesn't want to go to West Ham and they're not a big enough club and this and that. If he is getting bad advice and he stays at Manchester United, he could not even be on the bench because they're going to play Varane and Martinez. If Varane is out, Lindelof plays. If Martinez is out, Luke Shaw or Johnny Evans will play because Ten Hag likes a left-footed centre-back.
Eric Bailly is still there as well.
I think he went to Saudi.
Did he go? Did he leave?
Yeah, I think I saw that just now, but I don't know if it's. But even so,
okay.
So, like, guaranteed in front of him is Lindelof for Varane, and then you've got Johnny Evans and Luke Shaw. So he's not even going to be on the bench. You can't afford that as an England senior player in the year of the Euros when you've already coming off a season like he just had as well.
Yeah, like you can't. I think you've got to pick your battles wisely, haven't you? I think he knows he hasn't had the best season. Obviously, United resigned to the fact they're going to lose. I think, was it 80 million that they paid for Maguire or something ridiculous? So, I think United have resigned to the fact that they're only going to get what they can get for him. You're not going to. He has had an outstanding season where you can sort of demand a bit more money, especially with English players. You can normally do that. You think even Mason Mount, you can probably put an extra 10, 15 million on top. But yeah, I think he's got. I think that'll be a deadline day signing somewhere, whether it's West Ham or somewhere else. I think he'll move on, even if it's on loan with an option or mandatory to buy. I think he'll go. Yeah, I agree. Right, before we talk about Chelsea to finish off, I would like to get your predictions for the top four, and who you think is going to get relegated as well for the Premier League. Which one shall I start with? The relegation first. Should we do the bad and then do the good? Yeah, go on. Who do you think relegated? Yeah, who's getting relegated from that Premier League team side? League. So in no particular order, I think Luton. I think Luton will struggle this season. I don't think they'll have much about them. I'll be honest. I think it's going to be too much for them to be able to cope with this season. I think Everton, as we mentioned as well, I think Everton are going to be 100% struggle this season. I think, unless they bring in some really, good striker, I think they can't rely on Calvert-Lewin, so they need a striker. Who else do I think is going to struggle? It's tough. I feel like Forest might be down there. I know it's a tough one between Forest and Sheffield United. And I hate to use the teams that have just sort of been hovering there or thereabouts, but Sheffield United were a team that I sort of thought, I didn't even think they were going to go up. I got to be honest. Yeah, exactly. So I think I look at Luton, Everton, and Forest. I'm going to go for. Okay. I think Forest are a team that I just can't really gauge. When I watch them, they don't fill me with joy, basically. I don't watch their games and think, right, they're gonna win this 3-0. They could be playing Luton and I still think Luton might do them. So it's never, you don't really feel confident watching Nottingham Forest. But yeah, Luton, Everton, I think will go down this season, unfortunately, which would be a shame for I think they're the longest serving team in top flight football, but I think they'll go down. I think Forest will be all right. I think they got a good manager, and I think they've made some good signings in this window. My choices would be, I agree with you. I think Everton is finally going to go. Unfortunately, I think Luton might survive by the skin of their teeth. I think Wolves might struggle. I think Wolves will go down. So Wolves, Everton, some big teams, isn't it? And Wolves, Everton, and Bournemouth. Bournemouth, I think. I can't believe they sacked Gary O'Neill. I think that's outrageous after what he did last year. Yeah. And I wonder how the players will react to that because they clearly loved him. They clearly played for him. There's a few players already. There's been rumblings of loans and, I just wonder how disruptive that's going to be. So I've gone for some big teams. Wolves, Everton, and who did I say? Bournemouth. Bournemouth, yeah. Just to add to that as well, Gary O'Neill, I think, is in line for the Wolves job should it become available. So,
well, that might change then. I might check because I rate him a lot.
yeah.
So, have you got Man City winning the league?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have. I think Haaland will be too much again. I think he's just a goal scorer, isn't he? So I think unless Harry Kane does do the move to United, I think I've got to go for C.
Yeah, I think with City, like Haaland is the only player in world football, in my opinion, who's on the Messi and Ronaldo level. Like even Mbappe, I think, is a level below.
Yeah.
I think Haaland is the only one who's in that tier. Scoring 50 goals a season. Like it's not normal to score 50 goals a season. No. Like 30 goals in a season. Like for who was it, Rashford? That's a great season. Like world-class season. But Haaland is just going to bang in 50 goals in all competitions for the, if he stays injury-free for years, he'll just keep doing it because he's that good.
Yeah, he is.
So you've got City. Is anyone going to run them close, or is it going to be second by 15 points again?
I don't want to say this, but I feel like Liverpool this season I think they have to get it right this season because I feel like Klopp's.
He'll go if they don't.
Yeah, he's showing signs of cracks last season, especially in his press conferences. He didn't see himself, and some of his substitutions didn't make sense as well. Things didn't seem right with Liverpool last season. So I think this season now they've addressed the midfield. They've got Van Dijk as their captain now. They've got the team that they want, I suppose, going forward in attack. So I feel like they will be okay, providing they can get another body in midfield. Like I said before, maybe someone like Lavia. They might even come in for Caicedo last minute as well if he's still hanging around, the Amex somewhere with his boots in his hand. So they might come in for him. But I think Liverpool will push them. I'd love to see Chelsea, but we'll talk about them in a minute.
So you got City, Liverpool. Who's taking up those last two top four spots for you?
It's tough, and I don't want to be biased. I don't want to be biased, but I do feel without European football, Chelsea have no excuse. But
it's a big help in that.
Yeah, I've said before that this is my sort of the bare minimum for me is getting into Europe, whether it's Europa League or Europa League Conference. I think that is the bare minimum that we should be doing. But if we're going to be trying to be, exceeding our expectations, I think we should be looking at top four. And I think we've got the squad to do it. I mean, we've got a squad now that should be able to, in terms of quality and depth, whether it's good enough, we don't know yet because it's not been tested in the Premier League, but we've got a squad there now. And I think we should, without that European pressure, be able to just kick on with our games, swap our team around for the cups, domestic cups as well. We should be able to be all right. No games on a Sunday, or relatively no games on a Sunday or Monday. So we should be okay. I think we should be in there. The last team, I think, and this is always going to be difficult, I feel like Newcastle. I think Arsenal, and I think Tottenham. I know. I think Newcastle are going to have a really good season. I love Eddie Howe. I think he's a really good. And we have to. It's hard because I think we always think about the top four, top six of, back in the day where we used to think, top six and the top four. Yeah, it's not really a top six anymore because, Newcastle have done amazing last season. Brighton, Leicester have been in there before as well. So it's not, and it's always one of those top four, traditional top fours that always miss out normally, or top six that normally miss out. So I think Arsenal will try and push themselves, but really to the point where they're burn out before December. I think Tottenham. I always worry about Tottenham defensively. I do. I think they're not really good. They score a lot of goals, but they let a lot of goals in as well. And I think they worry me defensively. Attacking wise, fine.
If they lose Kane as well, they could have a real problem.
Well, you're looking at Richarlison as your talisman going up front, and the less said about that, the better. So, I mean, I think one of those two will definitely miss out. I think we should be in there. I think Newcastle, providing they don't get dragged into that Europa League conference, Europa League, if they come out of the Champions League and end up in the Europa League, I think that would be massive test for them, playing those Thursday nights and then Sundays. But I think they'll be thereabouts, and they can always dip back into the transfer window in December as well. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, see, because I'm the same as you. I think Newcastle are going to have a good season. The thing with Newcastle, which worries me, I don't think they've got enough goals in their strikers.
Okay,
that's the one thing which I think differentiates them from the other teams. They perhaps don't score enough.
Yeah,
but I still think they'll have a good season. Arsenal, I've already said, like, I don't think they've got enough goals in them, and I also, I don't know what the Kai Havertz signing's about. I don't understand it. It's no disrespect for him. I just don't get it, like, at all. And then I look at Man City are going to be top, I'd imagine. And then I look at which managers have been there, done it before, are used to building teams, who are improving players, which sides did well last year, which sides have done well in the window. And to me, the two which stand out would be United and Liverpool in terms of the business they've done. And then Klopp's been there and done it, so he knows. But I also agree with you. There was cracks last year in Klopp. And if Liverpool get off to a bad start, I'm not sure that he'll be able to stop that snowball. So, but yeah. I think it'll be City. Then I think it'll be Liverpool and United. And then I actually think it'll be Chelsea, because, again, I think Pochettino has been there and done it in terms of a top 4 challenge.
Yeah.
I think they've quietly, much like United, Chelsea have quietly just been building their squad, improved on some areas, keeping Levi Colwill, I think, is going to be a big bonus as well. And I look at United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and I look at their squads compared to Liverpool, Chelsea, and United, and I look at their squads in terms of depth, new signings, manager, everything together, and then versus Newcastle, Arsenal, Tottenham. I just think those three will have too much. But if I was going to pick one side to kind of break into that 4, it would probably be Newcastle. I just don't see Ten Hag missing out on top 4.
No, and you're right. You're right. It's tough. It is tough, and I think
it's very
United
difficult.
Yeah, and I think Ten Hag is, like I said before, he's a really good manager. I just think going forward for United, if Martial picks up an injury, Rashford's prone to a couple of injuries here and there as well. Who do you look to?
They need that striker. Yeah, they need that young striker to hit the ground running. And then I agree, that's the problem then, isn't it? But everything I've seen of him, he is very good, I got to say. But it's so much pressure on it, like a young kid.
Yeah, big price as well.
We have seen it before.
Yeah, we have, and I think he's definitely. I mean, I said I don't know much about him, but what a league to come into, and prove yourself, and then springboard yourself onto the world platform, and everyone talks about you for years to come.
Scored 6 in 6 games for Denmark as well. So like, he's clearly got something about him, and the Premier League does suit pacey strikers as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's another kind of bonus. Trying to think if there's anyone else. I don't see anyone else really breaking in to that sort of top 5 or 6. Arsenal fans will be giving me some grief, I think, but and it's strange because I really thought they were great last year. They just lacked depth, but I don't rate Eddie Nketiah. Is it Nketiah? Is that how you pronounce it?
Nketiah.
I'm terrible with names, but I don't really rate him as a very top level striker.
He's not he's not one that you could put in a Champions League final and say, right, go and get me 2 goals. He's not that level. He's not. And I think, I think Arsenal fans can't be too. I mean, the thing with Arsenal fans, and we've got to remember, Liverpool were poor last season, Chelsea were poor last season. United were good in spells. They had a really good back end after the December break, and they came back and done really well. So Arsenal looked good because I think other teams were playing really bad. I think Liverpool, Chelsea as well. So I think, not to say I'm not taking away the fact that they should have won the league. Let's be honest, they should have won it.
Yeah, they should have. Yeah.
But I think I think a lot more pressure should have been on Arsenal last season to stop them from going as far as they did to try and win that league. I think Chelsea and Liverpool should have been there, but we just were poor. We had poor seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea's season was pretty unprecedented in recent times. In a nutshell, what happened? Because it seemed from the outside, it seemed like one of them seasons that football fans like end up just halfway through the season. You're just like, oh well, you just start having fun because it's so bad.
We did as Chelsea fans. I think we did. We just had as much fun as possible to mask over what was going on. But in all honesty, I don't know. I think we just obviously we've had Abramovich at the club for 20 plus years. To then change to a new owner, new ownership, new idea, new philosophy, new project, whatever you want to call it, as part of a rebuild, he's going to ruffle feathers amongst the fans, amongst the players, amongst the backroom staff, amongst the hierarchy as well. There's a lot of change. You think back to Marina Granovskaya, Petr Cech was there as part of the board as well. So losing all those, I suppose the identity of the club, and then bringing in all these new faces and everything else, it's going to cause a lot of disrupt as well. I'll be honest. I think I'm going back to August, September. The sacking of Thomas Tuchel was probably the worst thing that Todd Bowley and the owners could have done. You think back to what he'd done the previous season, and then sacking him. I think it was after the Dinamo Zagreb game.
It was outrageous, I got to say.
It was a crazy way to sack him, crazy time to sack him. I think we just brought in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang as well. So we've done that to obviously appease, to please Thomas Tuchel, and then we sack him like a week later after bringing him in. So it just was very sporadic, and I think it showed that the owners didn't really understand what was going on at the club. They didn't understand the scale of what was probably coming in and what they had to do. And it must be difficult for them because they're coming in. Something's constantly moving whilst they're learning, whilst they're having to change and adapt. So everything's happening, juggling all these things. But this is why you've got advisors. This is why you keep, Marina Granovskaya. This is why you keep Petr Cech at the club for a little bit. You keep the players, you keep the board as it is, and you learn from them. Then if you want to make your changes, you do that as a transitional thing. Gradually, you get rid of one, you bring in a new face. You bring in the other, you take out one. You don't just get rid of the whole board, basically, and bring in a whole fresh face of people. You don't bring in Graham Potter without bringing in your technical director. It just didn't make any sense. So there was so much that was going on. I think fans were just more confused. If we were confused, I can only imagine what the players must have been going through, at that time when, Graham Potter's come in. Then Marco Correa's there, as part of, and then the whole sort of Brighton staff, backroom staff are there with them, which traditionally happens anyway. You normally bring your backroom staff with you, but it was such a weird time. It was such a weird, looking back at it now, it was such a weird time. I think you just said unprecedented. It's probably the best word to sum up that period, really.
Yeah, it was a very, from the outside, like someone who doesn't watch every Chelsea game. I watch a fair few, but not everyone. And it was just so weird. See everything from the players on the pitch to the bench to the football club. It all just seemed so out of sync. And then January came around, and it was just every single. It seemed like Chelsea were trying to sign everyone. Like it was almost like a running joke that every single player was just linked with Chelsea. And you brought in like so many players in January. And I don't really care about the money because it makes no difference to me. It's we all know football and money is outrageous and it's crazy. Yeah. But like, I just thought they brought in so many players in January. January players rarely work. If they do, it tends to be the odd one or a loan or something like a clever signing, like a Henrik Larsson or something like that. Like, they very rarely work instantly. And Chelsea had suddenly, I don't know how many you signed, but I'm sure it was about 5 or 6. It felt like that many. in January, and you just couldn't see how it didn't seem like there was a plan, because I think at least a couple were on loan as well, if I'm right. I think it was weird.
Yeah, I think the worst one. I mean, João Felix coming in. I think we paid like a fee for him. We paid all his wages, and I think it was probably the most expensive loan in Premier League history. I think it was, and then he got suspended for 3 games. I think he got sent off against Fulham.
He got started in his first game, didn't he?
First game, so he missed the next 3. So then he was only there for a couple of games anyway, like 12 games or something. So it was. I mean, looking back at it now, I mean, I know why we signed Enzo in January, because I think had we not, I think we would have definitely missed out on him this summer. I don't think he would have come to us without the Champions League football. And I think we needed Malo Gusto, who's right back now. He's going to be, Reece James hasn't played a full season probably for about 3 years now. So, just down to injuries and big injuries that have kept him out for, 50, 60% of the season. Yeah. So we needed some cover there as well. Losing Aspilicueta, Koulibaly, Rudiger, Kovacic, Mason Mount, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Christian Pulisic. There's so many players that we had to get rid of that just didn't want to be at the club. Lukaku is still there. Hakim Ziyech is still there. These are the players that do not want to be at the club still. So, yeah.
I felt sorry for Ziyech. Like, he was all set for his move when he failed his medical.
To PSG.
Yeah. I did feel for him.
Yeah, there was 2. There was the PSG move. Yeah, he had a move for PSG, and I don't think we sent the email back in time. There was the deadline day in January. So he was all set. He had he'd passed his medical, but I think we sent the email at like 12:10 or something stupid, and it was beyond the deadline. But then he's got a deal in the Saudi League, but he's failed the medical, but they still want to sign him, but he's got to take a pay cut. But he doesn't want to take the pay cut. He wants the full,
of course, yeah.
He wants the Saudi money. So yeah,
we all.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to this season. I think this season will be good. If I'm honest, I think I think we've got a lot about us this season. We've lost some big names, like I said, Cesar Spiriqueta on and off the pitch, club captain. Mendy going as well, bringing in Robert Sanchez from Brighton to replace him. Got dropped by De Zerbi as well. So
do you think that upsets? Not upsets, but do you think, like, Kepa, I think sometimes seems like he's a bit temperamental. I think he's actually a good keeper, and I think now that he's settled, he seems a lot better. But do you think the Sanchez signing upsets him, or do you think he's just got to accept that he's got to fight for his place?
I don't think it tests Kepa. I think Sanchez is not the keeper for me. That would, if we'd signed Onana or we'd signed Diego Costa from
Diego Costa. What a keeper he is!
Yeah, I can't remember where he's from now. Benfica, I think, or Porto.
I think.
Porto.
He's only 20. He's only 21.
Yeah, so if we sign someone like him, I would say, yeah, that's a test for Kepa. But bringing in Sanchez, I don't think it's not a test. It's more, can still get away with not, saving long shots like I didn't do last season. So there's still things that I think it's not a test for me. I think it's
just
like a little bit, because I think Mendy was probably a test. He started really well, went to the African Cup of Nations, and then came back, and he just wasn't the same goalkeeper. And then he injured himself, and he wasn't the same. But Kepa's improved, but I don't think, again, talking about if we was in a Champions League final, would I trust Kepa in goal? Probably not, because I know he's got a mistake in him, and he's not good at distribution either.
Would you go as far as saying he's a liability, or do you just think he's got a mistake in him?
I think he's got a mistake in him. I don't think it's a liability. I think he should be better this season. I think you look at Levi Colwell, you look at Thiago Silva, you look at Badiashile, centre backs that should be able to. I always say, your goalkeeper's only as good as your centre backs. If your centre backs are rubbish, you're going to be saving a lot more shots than you should be. So, if our centre backs are doing the job that they should be, and the defence as a whole, not just the centre backs, but I think he's got a mistake in him. I wouldn't say he's a liability. I think he's he's definitely pulled some brilliant saves. I think back to last season where we should have potentially lost 3 or 4. We only lost 2-0. He saved us. So I think he's got. I mean, he's still relatively young for a goalkeeper.
He is young, yeah. He's not even in his prime, I don't think.
No, so I think he's still learning as well.
He reminds me a bit of De Gea, where the way De Gea came into the Premier League was, obviously a very good shot stopper, had great saves in him, but also had a bit of a mistake in him, was a bit shaky with some certain things. But I think he's on that same trajectory of kind of settling, and he'll probably, get a bit stronger physically as well. And I can see him doing quite well. Do you know, very quickly, I watched the United-Chelsea game towards the end of the season, and going forward in the first half, I thought Chelsea were okay. They weren't too bad, but that second half performance was among the worst performances I've seen by a Premier League team. And I just wondered how you felt. Like, was it just a case of it was towards the end of the season, we're not doing anything, we're not in a relegation battle, couple of goals went in and they kind of just gave up? Or was that common in terms of the level of performance throughout the season? Because I'd never seen anything like that.
No, I think when we appointed Graham Potter, I thought this is going to be a turbulent season. Not because I don't think Graham Potter's a good manager. I think he is. But I just think that step up from Brighton to a club where scrutiny is everything. If you lose 2 games on the bounce, your name's in the back, on the back pages of the papers. When you're at Brighton, you can probably get away with those back-to-back defeats because you're not expected to win probably, against United, or you're not supposed to beat Liverpool straight after or whoever. So I think when we appointed Graham Potter, I thought this is going to be a tough season. When we sacked him, I think that's when I sort of gave up for the season, because I thought we've just appointed someone, we've paid him off 16 million. I think we paid 80, maybe, to get him out of his contract and his backroom staff at Brighton. So all in all, 100 million in terms of what the work that Graham Potter, we had to get him out of Brighton into Chelsea and then sack him from Chelsea. And I think when Frank Lampard came in, I think that was just, let's get the fans, because the fans were really getting onto Todd Bowley at that point, when just before Potter was sacked, and when Graham Potter was sacked as well, and when he was basically on the downfall. And I think Todd Bowley thought, how can I stop this from rotting anymore? Let's bring in a legend. Let's bring in someone that the fans love, Frank Lampard. I think when he came in, bearing in mind he got, he got let go by Everton because he nearly got them relegated, but he somehow manages to get a job at Chelsea Football Club again, based on the fact that he didn't really do that well again, for Chelsea the first time round as well. So I think when he came in, I thought this is just now, let's write the season off. So when we got to the United game, I think there was no expectation we were going to win, and I think we just knew I didn't think it was going to be that bad. That was a bad game. I think, if I recall, I don't think I watched the most part of the second half. I was sort of watching, but wasn't. It was poor, we just folded like a deck chair. We just were poor.
Yeah. Defensively, it was just outrageous. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to what I was saying in terms of just the disruption at the club. The fact that there's so many managers coming through the door, and different, the amount of players that we had on the books as well, 2 different training sessions per day, because we've got, 35, 40 players at a time. It can't be good for a player who just wants to get on and plays football.
Yeah, that's just crazy, isn't it? Last thing though, Levi Colwill should already be playing for England ahead of certain players, shall we say? Do you think Chelsea would have done better if they'd kept him at the club last year, or do you think there was so many players, and because he's a young player, he probably benefited from not being involved in what became, for lack of a better word, a bit shambolic in terms of 3 managers and performances like we just discussed? Like, probably better for a young player to not have to be in that mix. Do you think, or do you think he would have improved the team?
No, I don't think. I think you could have brought in pre-Lionel Messi's and a Neymar, and we still probably would have been poor. I think we were that bad last season. I think it was good that he was away from it. I think he went and learned a lot at Brighton. And I think it's probably one of the best clubs you could probably go to learn from. Brilliant manager in De Zerbi, Lewis Dunk, who I think is a really good centre back as well. Learning from him, just the way that they play as well. The way that as we spoke about, the sort of Solly March and I forget the South American's name on the left. I can't remember his name; it's gone out of my head, but. The way that Brian set up at the back, brilliant. I think he learned a lot from there as well.
Will he start?
I think he's come. Colwell, yeah, he has to now. I think he will. I think he will. I think I'd arguably go out to say he's going to be, England regular. He should be in that. Like you said, should be in that team. He should be in there now. I think we can't rely on Thiago Silva for another season.
I was going to say, isn't Thiago about 45?
He doesn't play like it. I think he's 39, so he's coming up to 40. But we can't rely on him this season, so we need to phase him out that back line. We can't have him saving us again for another season. Clearing the ball off the line. That shouldn't be his job. His job should be playing against Wrexham in the Carabao Cup or whoever we get in the Carabao Cup. That's his job. Bring him on. Last 10 minutes, if you wanted to give him a run out. Let's not rely on him every game. So I think our two centre backs, I think it'll be 4-2-3-1 that Pochettino will probably play as opposed to the three centre backs and the wing backs that we've seen under Potter. I think for me, Levi Colwell. It would have probably been for Fafana as well. But we've got Paddy Shield as well. We've obviously lost Koulibaly, who I thought was. Didn't really do much, but he has to start. I think he's got. And I think we just signed another defender as well. I've tried to give up about how many defenders we've brought. Yeah.
Who would you play? So if they were your centre backs, who would you have as your full backs? Sort of just off the top of your head.
It'd have to be Reece James and Ben Chilwell. Malo Gusto's looked really good in pre-season, but I think you get a bit more from Reece James. Going forward defensively, the assists, the balls in, the free kicks, the corners, everything from Reece James. And Ben Chilwell's improved for me in pre-season. And again, he's had a long injury, like 2 big injuries that's kept him out for back-to-back seasons now. So I think he's got a lot to prove for Pochettino.
You signed Disasi, didn't you? He's a great signing.
Yeah, so that was it.
Disasi and Levi Colwell together, mate. Oof, that's a really good. And you know what? That's a young centre back pairing for the next 15, next 10 years. Because they're both what's Colwell 20, and you've got Fafana 22, and you've got Disasi is 25. So you've got 3 centre backs there who can take you through for the next 10 years and build solid partnership.
Question mark about Fafana because this is the second big injury he's got now. So I think I don't know, can he come back from it and be the player that we want him to be? I'm not sure, but I think we've got enough cover in terms of some of the players you just mentioned there to cover for him, whilst he's out. So I'm not worried about the defense. Midfield, we really need that Caicedo deal done, if I'm honest. But
then even if without Caicedo, you could play. You could have Conor Gallagher and Enzo Fernandez as the 2.
No.
I'm not familiar with Conor Gallagher, so I don't know quite how good or bad he is. Enzo Fernandez, I think, is phenomenal.
Not in a pivot with
Enzo.
Other Chelsea fans might disagree with me, but I watched that last season and I love Conor Gallagher, but I think he needs to be further up the field. Yeah, he's a brilliant player. Again, same mold as McTominay, likes to get stuck in. He does everything. But I just think we need someone a bit more defensive minded alongside. And I don't even want to see Enzo playing in that pivot. I think Enzo has a role to play forward as well. I think we should be pushing Enzo slightly more up the field.
But then, I often think that the best pivots around the world, you've got 2 defensive midfielders, but one of them is capable of really progressing the play, either with his passing or with his ball carrying. And I think if you put Enzo in a pivot with Caicedo, that's almost like the perfect combination of that.
Oh yeah,
because
100%.
they're both
Yeah.
incredible defensively, but they're also both capable of picking a pass or carrying the ball forward. That would be a scary duo. I got to say, I think that would be potentially the best pivot in the Premier League. I'm trying to think of who's better.
I would have said Brighton, but they might
they
have
haven't got
lost
them. They're gone. Who's your first choice striker, mate, at the moment? Because Lukaku's still there. You've got Nicholas Jackson you signed. Broha I quite like. And Kunku.
And Kunku, he's just out. He's just injured. He's out for 3 months now. He got injured in our last preseason game. So he's out with a knee, some sort of he's done some sort of like ligaments in his knee. So he's out for 3 months. Started really well in the US, but the pitches are, I mean, I don't know why we go there. This is the same thing that happened to Armando Broja last season. The pitches are awful, and that's how Broja done his ACL because of the pitch. Same things happened to Kunku, but I think Nicholas Jackson, watched him a lot. Watched all the preseason games. He looks good. Signed him from Villarreal. Good striker. Hasn't got the best of records in terms of goals because I think he only played the back end of last season for Villarreal. But if you want to compare him to someone, I think Didier Drogba would be the first comparison I'd make from early glimpse.
Striker. Yeah,
where he's strong. He can hold at the ball. He looks like he's one of those strikers that just knows where the front of goal is and knows how to put it in the back of the net. Something that Kai Havertz couldn't do last season. But we haven't. I mean, Lukaku, I think will go somewhere. I think it might be Juventus. Pochettino said he doesn't want him at the club. He's got no future for him at the club anyway.
They were on about a swap deal, weren't they, with Vlahovic?
Vlahovic, but Pochettino said he doesn't want him. I think what they wanted was Lukaku plus us to give 40 million as well as Lukaku.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so it didn't go down well. Don't think with Chelsea, but I think Lukaku has to go. You mentioned obviously there's
he's one of them who causes problems as well. Yeah.
Well, him and Ziyech are the same. I think they're the last sort of bad eggs, if you want to call them that, at the club at the moment. So, and like you said, international tournaments coming up very, very soon. So I think, Lukaku's not going to want to be sat in the reserves or sat on the bench, week in, week out, not playing. He's going to want to play games. And I think, obviously the thing with Lukaku is made hard work of an easy situation. If he just, done things the right. If he'd done things the right way, he would have got a move that would have suited him, suited the club. Maybe Inter would have actually come in for him, and he didn't have to ruin whatever relationship he had there. And he's sort of done the same, I think, with Juve slightly as well. But he won't be at Chelsea, I don't think, come the start of the season. So Nicholas Jackson, Broja, I don't think will be ready until maybe October, November. And my last theory is we will sign Ivan Toney in January.
I don't think you'll be the only club, big club after him. I'm surprised someone hasn't taken a punt on him now to get ahead of the curve, because I think, say for instance, United don't go for Kane in this window. If they need another striker, or the young lad is feeling the pressure, or they get an injury, Ivan Toney makes a lot of sense, because he'll be relatively cheaply priced. So there could be a few clubs in for him. But just very final thing, I look at Chelsea, and this is the reason I got them in my top four. I think they've got a decent keeper who maybe has got a mistake in him. But I look at the defence, and I look at Colwell and Disasi, and then I look at the alternatives if one of them is out. It's solid. And then I look at Enzo Fernandez. I'm a massive fan. If they sign Caicedo, that defensive sort of spine is so good.
Yeah.
And then you've got some good wide players. You've got some good sort of attacking, 10s or midfield. My one concern with you at the moment, admittedly, I don't know a lot about Nicholas Jackson. I've only seen little bits and pieces. But outside of that, the other two young strikers are injured, and then you're into Lukaku. So if Jackson picks up a short-term injury or something, or gets a ban or something like that, Like, you're down to Lukaku as a striker. So I do think that could be your potential issue. Yeah. But I'm sure they'll try and get someone in. Surprised you haven't got him for Harry Kane, mate. I got to be honest with the relationship between him and Poch.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's the other relationship with Chelsea, Tottenham. We just never really do. Apart from Chini. Yeah,
there's been one or two, haven't there?
Yeah. Chini's the first one that springs to mind, but I'm sure there's 2 or 3 others that we've done business with as well. And in terms of Tottenham, Chelsea, Tottenham, I feel like there's a big one that I'm missing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to have a little look. William
Gallas. Yeah, Gallas, I think. Did Gallas go from...
No, he went to Arsenal,
didn't he? And then Arsenal, yeah. There's a big one I feel like I'm missing.
Trying to think. I think it's going to be like really obvious now when we see it. Chelsea made their first direct signing in 14 years from Chelsea. Spurs signed who? Get to the point. That's the headline, and then it doesn't tell you who it is. 19-year-old forward Joseph Sunsup Bell.
I've got them here. Yeah.
That wasn't really what I was looking for. I'm sure there's been one. I thought there was for sure been 1 or 2 transfers between the clubs. Not many, but I can't find. I've Googled it and I can't find any.
I think I've got it.
Your Google skills must be better than mine.
Yeah, so Carlo Codicini. The one I was thinking about was Gus Poyet.
Ah, yes, of course. There we go.
Yeah,
that's the one I was trying to think of.
That's not the third one, but yeah, Gus Poyet was the one I was thinking of. That was the big one for us, anyways, Chelsea fans. But yeah, I think we don't do much business. We need Harry Kane. I'm not saying we don't, but I think he'll end up at United.
Yeah, I agree. I just you haven't really been there's been no link there, really, is there? And I was just thinking.
No.
Right. Theo, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. Went a bit longer than we planned, but it's been a lot of fun. And you're more than welcome to come back anytime. Tell the people where they can find your stuff on social media and whatnot.
Yeah. So From the Shed End. So as you can see on the screen, if you listen on an audio, then it's at From the Shed End. So it's all one word. That's on Twitter. Underscores between each of the words on Instagram. So just underscore everything after each word on Instagram. And yeah, and YouTube as well. If you search From the Shed End on YouTube, you'll be able to find us. So make sure you subscribe. And last but least, thank you very much again for having me on the podcast, on the channel. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks.
It's all good, my friend. I really enjoyed it. Good chat. And we'll see how bad our predictions were in a while. See how it pans out. I'm sure there'll be a few transfers now, so we'll have that excuse in the bag that some transfers changed the if we'd known that, it would have been fine. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, and cheers to everyone who watched, commented, and please do subscribe and all that good stuff. And if you want to give a bit of extra support to the channel, you can join at patreon.com/AcePodcastNation for the price of not even the price of a coffee per month, and helps keep the channel going. And of course, big thanks to the Sports Social Podcast Network for supporting the audio side. Nice one, guys. Cheers.